Hello everyone, this is Melanie, and this video is a solutions video for a few of the different questions from the math quiz from the 5.6 income method module section of your course. So we find that a lot of students get a little bit overwhelmed with these questions, so we thought that we would post a video to help you in order to kind of get your brain wrapped around how you want to approach these questions to solve them. Okay, so question number 1 is a little bit tricky, and the reason for that is because it has a little comment here that I'm highlighting in yellow for you that people don't pay much attention to, and so they don't understand why some of the values are used and why some of them aren't. The thing about this question is that it gives you the current rents on the property at this $270,000 here. Okay, but when you actually do some research, you find out that the gross potential, the maximum amount that could be collected in a perfect world, is $310,000. And the difference between those two numbers is the reason why you suspect the building is poorly managed. $270,000 out of $310,000, when you do that math here, you find out that it's only 87%, just over 87% full, which means that the vacancy rate is almost 13% on this building. And if you were an investor, you probably wouldn't want to run your buildings or pay for buildings based on that much of a vacancy rate. Or if you were selling your building, you wouldn't want people to pay based on that vacancy rate, depending on what the numbers do for you for whatever perspective you're looking from. So when you do research on this kind of thing, you want to use good, solid data. You want to use good, valuable numbers that actually reflect what a normal building operating at a normal vacancy would actually yield for you. So we want to use the long-term vacancy rate of 5% that they've given for the comparable building, because that one is much better run than the subject building, because the subject building's vacancy is at that whopping 13%. So that is the number that we care about here. We don't want to be using, some of the numbers here for that comparable, for the subject, because the numbers are bad. So we're going to ignore that $270,000. We're not going to use that number because that's the poorly managed part of this. So once you know kind of what the perspective is, then it's pretty easy to actually solve the question. Okay, so for these questions, I find that it's easiest to sort of work backwards. So I'm being asked to find the market value of the subject property. And so I know that I need my NOI and I need a yield in order to plug all of the numbers into my formula. So for NOI, how do I find my NOI for the subject property? Well, I'm going to use the gross potential revenue, the vacancy and bad debt rate, and my expenses. So it's going to be the two numbers here in the top part, and then I'm going to use this 5% because we said that the 13% vacancy was too much, and we're not going to base our business model on that and our willingness of what we're going to pay. The yield we're going to find using our comparable property, because we don't have enough information, obviously, about the subject property to find that using this formula, because we're trying to find the sale price. So we're going to use the comparable properties information in order to find our yield. So how do we do that? We find the NOI for our for our comparable property, and we divide that by our sale price. So the sale price is given here, and then all of the other information to find our NOI is already given there as well. So the gross potential rent, the operating expenses, and we're going to use that same vacancy rate. Okay, so once you have all of your steps, it's easy to figure out what you need to do. You just find your NOI for that comparable, your property A. So you take your gross potential revenue, you subtract your vacancy and bad debt, which is your 5%, and you subtract your expenses. So $312,800 minus 5% minus $88,200 is $208,960 for your NOI. So you see that we have that NOI plugged into our yield formula as our second step, and we're going to use that and divide that by our sale price for that comparable property of $2,190,000. So that gives us a yield of 0.095455, blah, blah, blah. You'll have more decimals. And you can actually keep it the same, so you can leave it as a decimal and just use that as I've done here in the bottom in our final formula. Or you can convert that to a percentage by multiplying by 100%, and that will give you a yield of 9.54155 with more decimals. And that would be a percent. So if you decided to convert it to a percentage, then you would need to remember to put the percent on it when you divide, because you've moved the decimal, okay? So once you have that yield, then you find the NOI of the subject property. So we do that using the numbers that they've given us in the question and the 5% vacancy. So 310,000 gross potential rents minus 5% vacancy minus 87,900 in expenses, and you get an NOI of 206,600, which you see is down here in our formula, and then you divide that by the yield that you found, so either the converted one to the percentage or the one that was a decimal, and when you do that calculation, you get a sale price of $2,165,267, and it asks you to round it to the nearest $1,000. So that's why the answer is $2,165,000, because 5,267,000. If you ask yourself, is it closer to 5,000 or is it closer to 6,000? It is closer to the 5,000 because it's only $267 away from 5,000. Okay, so this question is a little bit easier, a little bit shorter. So it gives you two comparables and it just names them A, B, C, and X, Y, Z to be difficult. So it's more like comparable A and comparable X, if you want to think of it that way. Just two different buildings. It gives you the gross potential rent, the operating expenses, and the sale price for each one. And it gives you a long-term vacancy rate of 4%, which you apply to both of those comparables. And it says, based on the above, the market yield is estimated to be between. And when they say to be between, they want you to give them two different numbers. Okay, so it's a range that they're looking for. So you use the yield formula. So that means we need NOI and we need sale price. Now they've given us sale price, but we need to actually find the NOI for each of those comparables in order to plug both of those into the formulas. So they've given us gross potential rent, the vacancy rate of 4%, and operating expenses. So we're going to use those to find our NOI. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We have our comparable ABC. To find NOI, we use our gross potential rents, our vacancy of 4%, and our expenses of $44,000 to get an NOI of $75,040, which is here in the formula. And then we use our sale price of $635,930. We divide the NOI by the sale price to get a market yield of 11.8%. For comparable XYZ, we'll do the same thing. We use our gross potential rent of $138,000. We use our long-term vacancy of 4%, and we use our expenses of $50,000 to find our NOI of $82,480, which is used in the bottom formula to find yield, and we use our other sale price of $711,000 to get the other yield of 11.6%. So our answer here is answer number 2, because it's 11.6 to 11.8. Now I just want to point out answer number 3 really quickly. They kind of want to trick you with this one, because when you actually do this calculation, when you actually push the equals button, it will be in your calculator 0.116 with a bunch more decimals. Oh, sorry, that one's the 8. So 0.118 with a bunch more decimals, and this one, when you push the equals button, it will be 0.116 with a bunch more decimals. Now remember, it's the same value, but it's expressed in a different way. This is the decimal form. This is not the percent form. In order to get to a percent, we need to multiply both of those by 100% in order to get our 11.8% and our 11.6%. So please don't be suckered into answering that, because answer number 3 is incorrect. It is actually answer number 2. So the difficulty in this question is how they've actually presented the information to you. So I've actually taken the information and I've put it into this table for you to let you see kind of how it's presented, but I'm going to break it down and let you know what's happening sort of and how they're actually presenting the info. So for the subject property C, because they've got it listed first and then they refer to the comparables after that, the first number in each line corresponds to that subject property C. And then the second number corresponds to one of the comparables, which I've assumed is comparable A, because that's the one that they mentioned first in the question. And then the last one is your comparable your comparable B, which is this column here. So when you see it this way, it makes it a lot more sense as to how the information's laid out. And so when you figure out what data is related to which property, it's easy to know how to solve. All they want you to do is they want you to calculate the NOI and the yield for both of the comparable properties, because we have all of the numbers we need to do that, and then we use the NOI and the yield to find the market value for our subject property C, for the thing that we're trying to price. Okay, so I've shrunken that table here into a much smaller version so it fits on the page, so that we can kind of see what's happening with the values. So we have comparable A here, and all of the values for comparable A in this column. So the net operating income is equal to your gross potential income, which is $38,000, minus your vacancy of $3,800, and subtract your current operating expenses of $25,000 to get an NOI of $9,200. Then we take the cap rate formula, so the yield formula, and we take our NOI of $9,200 and we divide that by our sale price here, that's at the top for that property, to get our yield, our cap rate, our cap yield, all the same thing, remember, of 0.048421, blah, blah, blah. So again, you can leave it as this is, you can just keep it the same, or you can convert it to a percentage, whichever, but when you convert that to a percentage, remember, you have to remember to slap the percentage on it in order to do the division later, okay? Comparable B here is the next one, so we'll put that one in blue, and so we have 49,000, 4,900, and 32,000, so that's all the bottom numbers there, and then we have our sale price for that one of 220,000, so you just use the 49,000 gross potential income minus the $4,900 vacancy minus the operating expenses of 32,000 to get your NOI. Oops, I'm going to do it in blue here. To get your NOI of 12,100, and so we've got that NOI there, and then we divide that by the sale price to get 220,000. Sorry, to get 0.055, and then again you could leave this the way it is, or you could multiply it by 100, right, and you would get your 5.5%. But again, if you convert it to the 5.5%, you have to remember to put the percent on it when you use it later in the equation. Then you find the NOI for the subject property. So we're given the subject properties numbers here, 54,000 minus 5,400 minus 36,000 to get our NOI of 12,600, and then we use the NOI from the subject property and each of the cap rates. So that's each of these in order to find the sale prices based on both comparables, and then that is our range of values. So you see that we have the sale price is equal to the NOI divided by the cap rate. So in this case, it would be 260,217. And we did the same thing with the other one, 12,600 divided by this cap rate here. That was the first one, right? This is the second one. And you divide that and you get $229,090, and they say round it to the nearest 1,000. So for this one, it's rounded to 260,000, and the other one is rounded to 229,000. So your final answer is you should sell that property, or you should purchase that property for a range between 229,000 to 260,000. Okay, so this question is fairly straightforward. So it's asking us to find the market value. So find the market value of a property using all of the numbers and values that they've given. So we're trying to find this market value. We know to find market value or the sale price, same thing. We take our NOI and we divide it by our yield or our cap yield. Okay, so we've been given the cap yield in the question, so we've been given the 6%, but we haven't been given the NOI, so we need to use the information in the question to find the NOI first so that we can plug it into the formula with our yield and then find our market value. So there's immediate repairs that are mentioned in the question, and I know that sometimes when they use that word immediate, it makes you want to immediately take care of it. Don't be misled by that. The repairs part of this question is nowhere in this formula. So we have to use this formula to solve for our market value first, and then we subtract those repairs off at the very end. And why are we subtracting the repairs off anyway? Well, because if you were the one that were going to buy the building, you wouldn't want to have to pay $65,000 for a building that you just purchased. You'd want the seller to take care of that cost because they didn't actually take care of the property properly when they were the owner. So we want to subtract that off and not put that as part of the purchase price. Okay, so we use our cap rate that is given in the question. We find our NOI, and we use both of those in our sale price formula in order to find our sale price. So the NOI is your gross potential rent of $430,000 minus the 4% vacancy minus the $130,000 in expenses. So you get $282,800 for your NOI. You divide that by 6, and again, you have to remember when you're plugging that in, you're going to actually plug it in using that percent key. So 282,800 divided by 6% equals will give you your $4,713,333. And then at the end, like we said, we're going to subtract those immediate repairs off because we want to make sure that we don't include that in the sale price in what we're willing to pay, because we want the seller to be responsible to pay for those repairs because they didn't maintain the property properly while they were the owner. So you get $4,648,333, and you see that the answers are rounded, and we round it to that nearest 1,000, $4,648,000. Okay, so this one is another one of those weird linear versions for our value information. So they have the subject property, and then they have two comparables after it. So they've got C, A, and B that you've got. So all of the first values relate to the subject property C, and then the second value relates to comparable property A, and then the last value relates to comparable property B. So comparable property B is there, and comparable property A is there, and our subject property is C here. So we're trying to find the sale price for our subject property, and if you're having a hard time finding the correct answer for this question, it might be because you are subtracting off the 5% vacancy rate that they actually give you in the question. Now, UBC loves to give extra info and hopes that you just use everything and you're not paying attention to what they've given you. If you look at the question and you look at how they describe the revenue, they've given you the gross realized revenue. They've not given you the gross potential revenue. They've given you the gross realized revenue. So the gross realized revenue already has this long-term vacancy rate of 5% subtracted off of it. So you wouldn't subtract it again. You're going to ignore this 5% and you're just going to subtract the expenses off of that gross realized revenue to get to your NOI. So it looks very similar to one of the other questions that we did. You just use the information that they've given us. So you take your gross realized revenue for your comparable A, which is $47,000, and you subtract your operating expenses to get to your NOI of $18,000. Then you use that NOI of $18,000 and you divide that by the sale price of $210,000 to get your 8.5714 blah blah blah. And remember, this will be in a decimal form, so you can leave it in the decimal form or you can convert it to the percentage, whichever you'd like to do, is whatever your choice. Second comparable B is your 52,000 and your 34,000 to get to your NOI of 18,000, and then you divide that by its sale price of 225,000 to get the 8%, which will show up as 0.08 blah blah blah. Then we find the subject properties NOI. They've given us those numbers. 56,000 minus 37,000 is equal to 19,000, and then we use that NOI for both calculations for market value, and we just use each of these yields in order to do that. So we've got the first one here and the second one there, and you end up with market values of 221,666.67, which they've rounded to 222,000, and the other one is 237,500, which they've rounded to 238,000 because the $7,500 is considered to be closer to 8,000 than 7,000. So your final rounded answer range is 222,000 to 238,000. So hopefully this video is helpful, and you should be able to use the solutions in this video in order to apply them to all of the other questions that are in the quiz. All it takes to get good at these math questions and the math type questions is practice. So all you need to do is spend the time to practice the questions. You really do want to be very good at all the math and math type questions in the course, because that is the easy part. The law is actually the hard part. So make sure that you take the time to really study these so that you're fast, so that you're accurate, and you're getting really good scores in really short time so that you're well prepared before you get to the point where you want to start your mock exams. So have fun, happy studying, and I will meet you in the next video.